I spend 2 to 4 days a week deep in the backcountry, hiking by myself, this watch is always with me.
Which is not the typical place you'd find a Vacheron, let's say.
Vacheron said to use it this way, and I'm going to do it.
I'm Thomas Hendricks of 2024 New York City, and today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Xan Miltenberger. You can find him on Instagram as Quantum Ocean Warrior. You've done a lot both in your career as a traveler and a writer as well, and I think those experiences really inform a lot of the pieces we have. We have everything from Victorinox to Vacheron, and just to dive right in, let's start with the watch you have on your wrist. You have an F.P.Journe, and you were early on this brand as well.
Before I had money.
Before you had money. And before F.P.Journe, I would say, like, really took off as kind of like the independent of the day. Why did you choose, what attracted you to F.P.Journe, and why this one in particular?
I had read about F.P.Journe for a long time, and I thought there's no way I'm ever going to be able to afford something like that. So I was just kind of a casual reader about it for a while. And when I went to law school, that kept up, and I realized at some point I might be able to make enough money to buy one of these. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I took a trip to LA in 2016 or 17, and the first thing we did was stop into the Journe boutique. Before we went in, I told my wife, don't worry, we're not buying anything. I just need to learn more about this. But at the time, Journe hadn't caught on the way it is now, and they had basically everything. Any watch you wanted, they had special watches, and I got to spend a good long time sitting with them and actually handling the watches and seeing what they were about. But it was a while after that I finally got into the brand and got to the point where I felt comfortable buying them. And luckily enough, this ended up being my first watch, even though it was the one that I wanted to see originally. I moved to LA, and one of the first things I did when we moved there was I went straight to the Journe boutique. Mm-hmm. And I ended up spending an hour or so there just talking, telling them about what I liked in watches, why I came to the brand. As we were leaving the boutique, the person I was speaking with said, feel free to stop in anytime, you're always welcome. And I said, don't tell me that, or I will. And so for a while, I was very careful about limiting myself. Once a week, I'll make sure to go on Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever it was. And I'd stop in and talk to them for a little bit. And very quickly, everyone who worked there became very good friends. The sense of community was what kept me around. Pretty quickly, I didn't care that much about the weight anymore. I wanted a watch, of course, but that kind of became second in my mind to meeting up with very interesting people, very friendly people. What they cared about was, are you passionate about watches? Do you like this brand? And so I started following them around, and I went to Geneva, and they were nice enough to include me in the trip, and then I ended up going to a couple others. At some point, they pulled me aside and said, you need a watch. You're going to too many of these events, you're too passionate, everyone knows it. This was the result. It was a really important result for me in that a lot of my collecting journey has represented something about myself, about friendship and connections and community. That's what this watch has come to mean to me. As serious as this hobby can be, we forget about the fun aspect. You know, this is a very serious piece of horology, but at the same time, it's a ton of fun. I enjoy pairing it with wild colored outfits, and it just lends itself to that. But at the same time, it's meant to be a sports watch. I run in it, I hike in it. I'm an advocate for using a watch how it's supposed to be used.
Yeah, no save queens here.
No, everything gets worn. I won't say abused, because I'm subconsciously very careful. When I'm doing these things, I'll walk around corners and put my hand over the watch.
But they live full lives.
They live absolutely full lives. They do anything that I do. Any one of my watches does anything that I would do.
Yeah, and we have a lot of stories later on that we want to get to. I want to kick it back first where it all began. There's, under your right hand, there's a Victorinox there. What age did this come in?
I don't exactly remember. It was around the 3rd or 4th grade. I got this. I was obsessed with timekeeping, and just the idea that you can wear this machine that magically tells you the time. I got this and wore it everywhere for a very long time, but it also related to being outside, to being an adventurer. For me, watches, it's something extraneous that you're doing. It's something extraneous that you're wearing. You're purposefully getting into this, and if what you're wearing is not exuding happiness, you shouldn't be wearing it. There's no reason to have it. And to this day, this watch is worth literally nothing. It's a 30-year-old quartz Swiss Army watch. But every time I wear it, I still smile. I'll be driving my truck to go somewhere, and there it is on my wrist. I just smile at it. So it holds a really special place for me. It's where the ideas for getting involved in watch collecting started.
And where did we go from there? In what we have in this lineup here, what was next?
The oldest watch I have now, other than this is the longest serving subject.
And this is the NOMOS Autobahn, correct?
The NOMOS Autobahn.
A very fun watch.
It really goes to what I was saying. A watch needs to be fun at some point. I lived in Germany for a little while. It was my first time abroad, and I spent 6 months there. And I got pretty fascinated with Bauhaus and this, very austere but simple design.
Exactly.
Orange is my favorite color. That's another reason why I love this watch. I get the orange hands, and I had to go out and buy the orange stretchy band for it too. It's also the watch that I am never allowed to sell.
And why is that?
This is my wife's favorite watch. No matter what else happens, for some reason she loves this watch, so I'm not allowed to sell this. It's also that piece of collecting that I have far more expensive watches or exclusive watches or limited or hard to get, but at the end of the day, this is just fun and it makes me happy, and that's what I think watch collecting needs to be. It's not a race to see who can get the most exclusive pieces or who can one up the next person. It's what you can find joy in. It's so different than everything else in my collection, and NOMOS in general, I think, does such a fantastic job of sticking to their design language. It's recognizable, they don't deviate from it, and I think that's really important for a watch brand to have their own language.
Well, let's talk about this Omega here, because of course this is fun and has the Snoopy motif on it, but you also grew up in, I think, what you called an Omega family, right?
Yeah, sort of. My family definitely didn't have the money growing up to buy expensive watches, but each of them got a gold Omega. I don't even remember what they were. They were quartz watches. I grew up with this idea of you're either a Rolex person or an Omega person. And
what's the difference between those two?
Well, for me, and that's why I ended up starting my actual watch collecting journey with Omega, there had to be a reason you chose Omega. If you were just going out to buy a watch, I felt like you went and bought a Rolex. But the people who went out and bought Omega had to stop and think about it. And I thought, well, I had to stop and think about it, so I should be buying Omega. And then I justified it with the normal things about, the coaxial escapement and things like that. So when I first started researching for my first watch, I was combing through all the websites and saw this was right after the previous Silver Snoopy was released.
Yep.
I saw it on the website and I thought, that's it. That's going to be my first watch. It's fun. It's still a little childlike. It reminds me of why I liked watches when I was a kid. So I went into the boutique and proudly announced that I wanted a Snoopy, which...
How did that go?
Well, the first boutique I went to didn't laugh at me, but maybe after that there were some people who laughed. But I kept going into the Omega boutique near me and saying, if another Snoopy watch ever comes out, I want it. If another Snoopy watch comes out, I want it. And I did that for, I don't remember how many, I guess it was 5 years in between the releases. They finally ended up calling me about a month before it was released and said, this is happening, do you want it? And I said, of course. Mm-hmm. But oddly, this is my newest watch. It took me about 2.5 years to get. And I thought about buying it on the secondary, but for me it was a special piece. It was something that represented how I started in watch collecting. These things are mine.
Yes.
And I want my name on them. So it was important for me with this watch especially to get it with my name on the card. It's another one of those watches that's just fun.
And we have some heavy hitters to get to in a second. I want to touch on this Tudor real quick because I think this really hits on a big ethos for you, which is getting outside tool watches and wearing tool watches, let's say, as they're intended.
This has been a lot of places. My wife and I spent the last 6 months traveling a good bit all over the place. I took 2 watches with me, and this was one of them. I wanted a watch that was versatile, that was still inexpensive, and a little more under the radar. The other piece that this represents for me is the friendship aspect, the community aspect. This was actually a present from a good friend of mine. We started off being friends just because of watches. We had the connection of liking any watch, no matter the price point. If it's a watch, it's cool.
Yep.
We can find something cool about it. He knew how much I was trying to get this watch. It was right when they came out, and he got the first allocation from the boutique, and he very kindly gave it to me. But I also brought it because of what Tudor is. It might be cliche to say that Tudor's the new Rolex, or where Rolex was. It's pretty true. It's become a more go-to tool watch. Rolex has moved a little more to luxury. Mm-hmm. I still use them like tool watches. I think it's a ton of fun to use them as tool watches. I think that Tudor has been on this slow, steady march towards creating the perfect $4,000 to $5,000 tool watch. And every new watch they come out with, they step a little closer, step a little closer. For me, this is the top Tudor. It's the right size. It's the smaller diameter. It's the 39. Mm-hmm. So it's also the thinner case. It's easier to wear. It's titanium. It weighs almost nothing.
And adventure ready
And it's adventure ready. You can take it anywhere. You can do anything with it. You can smash it around. You can throw it down rocks, and it's going to be fine. I really love being able to wear a watch like that.
You're exactly right. This is everything you need into a watch and nothing you don't need.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, in your words, abuse ready.
Yeah.
Very wearable in the titanium. And I think that brings us to another titanium watch that gets a lot of wrist time and a lot of outdoor time, mm-hmm. where for another Romain Gauthier collector, that might not be the case. What is this one here?
So this was originally the Continuum. This is, I think it's the 3rd edition, so now it's called the C. One, I'm a huge fan of titanium in general. I have discovered at some point that I can appreciate watches and I can love watches, but I don't have to own them.
Yes.
And I think that was a big step. But for me, owning a watch, I want it to be very wearable, because like I said, anything I own, I want to be able to wear it anytime and in any circumstance. I've really started gravitating towards titanium. It's just such a wearable material, and I'm really glad that more watch companies are starting to pick it up now. I am just a huge supporter of indies for a variety of reasons. I like artisanship in general, but I also like being able to have access to the people. Access to the creators, access to the factories and workshops, knowing what goes into making these watches. I heard an interview with Romain that there's so many people that say, why would you spend that much on a watch? Why? Yeah. What's the purpose?
At any price point, really.
At any price point. You have a phone, there's no point in watches anymore. He wanted to make something with this that you could see the beauty without having to explain it. Even though we're sitting here me explaining how beautiful it is and why it's beautiful and the story behind it, he really did accomplish that goal so well. It's a very simple watch in terms of a first glance, but then you start to see all the details that go into the construction. The kind of perfect integration between the strap and the lugs. The watch is super thin.
Very ergonomic.
Very ergonomic. As soon as you put it on, it just disappears onto your arm. But the case is titanium. The movement is also titanium. I just think it's one of the best looking movements out there.
The depth is incredible. For a watch that thin, it's like cathedral-esque. I mean, the amount of negative space that he was able to achieve there, and all the details that are in there as well.
And there's still all these little details that make it really interesting from a technical point of view. When you pull the crown, there's actually a little snail cam in the back that stops the balance wheel. And then when you push it again, it gives a little shove to the wheel to get it moving again and back up to speed properly. I love little details like that you can learn and share with others. And
to see the laboratory at work.
Yes, exactly. You really see his mind and his ideas in it. I find this to be a really good way for people to get into a brand like this, because you don't have to understand much about it. You can just wear it and it's beautiful and it's comfortable and you won't notice it. But if you want to dive in further, there's so much to dive into.
You can appreciate it at every layer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think one of the best things about independent watches and indies is that you get a lot of like authorship around it. You get a lot of the director's fingerprints on it. And I want to move right now in a slightly different direction. Let's say we've done a lot of titanium sports stuff, and we have a great one coming up at the end. But this F.P.Journe as well is a bit different than your usual. What can you tell me about this? This watch is really one of my favorite pieces. It's an elegant watch. It's gold. You can wear it with a suit and tie or tuxedo, or you can wear jeans and a t-shirt and it works just as fine. Yeah. But this is such a quintessential Journe piece for me. And yes, a very Journe.
It was the first one that I was able to really choose. This was my choice for the watch, and I wanted it to be one that represented Journe. If you know anything about the brand, you can recognize this from a mile away. I wanted rows on rows. I was on a trip to Geneva, and I got to see the models that were released at Watches and Wonders. And I saw it and said, okay, no, never mind. I have to have this one. I was supposed to get
It's such a great feeling too.
Yeah.
When you know, you know.
That was mine. And even to this day, one of the things that I just really love about this is that it's mine. It's an accomplishment in a lot of ways. It's gold. It has that feeling of elegance, and it allows me to be that character when I want to be. And they're just such fantastic people, and they've been so welcoming. And this is in a lot of ways represents the pinnacle of my collecting right now. Not because of rarity or how hard it is to get or the actual watchmaking behind it, but because of the friendships I had because of it. I couldn't be happier doing this piece. I was sitting around one night in my pajamas, in my recliner, watching YouTube, at midnight on a Friday. And my wife was sitting there too, and she said, "Why are you still wearing that?" And I said, "Because it makes me happy."
Yeah.
That's why. These are really expensive things. They should bring you joy no matter what. Whether it's, the $3,000 NOMOS with all the bright colors or, a $50,000 gold Journe. If you're not getting happiness from them, you shouldn't own it.
There's so much warmth visually to this piece, and I think, like you said, for what it represents as well. And I loved, before the camera started rolling, you said you have to be a little bit weird to be into Journe. And there's like a community of weirdos that you found through this as well.
Yeah, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way at all, because, unless I'm disparaging myself as well. I recognize I'm a weirdo in a lot of ways. But you have to have this appreciation for it on a different level than it just being a watch or just being a collectible thing. You have to, in a way, be a weirdo in the same way that Francois Paul is. You have to appreciate these fine details and appreciate these little things that make it what it is, but also appreciate the loyalty to the idea of watchmaking and timekeeping. For me, I have these three pillars of watchmaking: precision in timekeeping, precision in finishing, and innovation. And I try and group what I buy now into one of those. So that was a big thing that I for getting into Journe, was precision in timekeeping, his absolute obsession with precise timekeeping. So it's another thing that I truly appreciate about him and the brand itself.
And from here, I want to pendulum swing back again. We went from titanium to rose gold, and I want to go back to a very adventure-ready kind of tactical piece as well, which is this Vacheron here. This is the Everest edition Chronograph Corey Richards.
Yeah.
Not an easy piece to get.
No.
But the more interesting thing is how it's fit into your life and the stories that you've built up with it.
For a very long time, I've been into hiking in the outdoors and doing any sort of adventure activity. And so I'd actually followed Corey Richards for a while through his articles, through his photography. When the prototype was shown, it was another Snoopy moment. It was, I'm going to contact every boutique I can. I'm going to tell them I want that watch if it ever comes out.
Your persistence came out.
The persistence came out. This watch has really come to be the most important watch in my collection and has the most significance in a lot of ways. It represents this new chapter in my life I'm in now. My wife and I moved to Montana, just outside of Glacier National Park, and I spend 2 to 4 days a week deep in the backcountry hiking by myself. This watch is always with me.
Which is not the typical place you'd find a Vacheron, let's say.
Vacheron said to use it this way, and I'm going to do it.
There we go.
It is going to be an adventure watch. It gets beat up, it goes camping with me, it doesn't come off my wrist. It is my companion. There's a deep story to that. I got a call one night from a Vacheron boutique. My last dog was sick, and this was the day before. My wife had run to the market, and I was laying on the floor with the dog, eating cheeseburgers. I'd gone and gotten a bag of cheeseburgers. And I got this call and I thought, no, there's no way I can talk to these people right now. No way. So I put it on silent. They left a voicemail and then texted me and said, I'm usually not this forward, but please call me back. So I got myself together, called them, and they said, can you come down to the boutique tomorrow? And I said, absolutely not. And they said, well, can you come down Saturday? And I said, I think I can. And he said, well, I can't say what this is about, but be prepared to buy something. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay. The next day was pretty rough, and Saturday, I went down to the boutique and they had this watch for me. And my dog, he was always my adventure buddy. We did everything together. We hiked all over the place. He used to go on 15, 16, 18 mile runs with me. No problem. We hiked all over the place together. And I get this watch the day after. And this has become the way to keep him with me on these adventures. Yeah. All the time, while using this the way Vacheron says it should be used. I still get a little broken up about it, but this is my way of keeping him with me on these hikes. It's a fantastic watch for it. It's big for the watches I normally wear.
Mm-hmm. But titanium.
But it's titanium. Yeah. I don't notice it. The rubber strap fits perfectly. It's nice and malleable. I will hike for 6 or 8 hours. No problem. I'll camp all night with it on. No problem. Don't notice it. And
it's held up very well.
It's held up very well.
Through a lot of brush as well.
Yeah. A lot of the hiking I do there is I don't want to run into people. So I try and find hikes that are as remote as possible, and they tend to be pretty overgrown. And this watch just plows through it with me and keeps building the memories with me.
Xan, this has been a novel with many chapters. So many different approaches that you've gone, so many different stories to unpack, and it's really not about the watches themselves. So many great pieces here, but I love your attitude. I love the places you've been with these watches. I think it's what it's all about. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.